everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net and scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Portal podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me as we dive into another fantastic episode. And thank you to all of you out there who are giving me your love and support and spreading the word about the show. Today we got an epic show lined up. I am joined by Jeff Berube from Rhode Island, who is here to discuss his role as an investigative intuitive and talk about his process and so much more. So we're going to dive into that now, so buckle up, folks. We're going in. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. You and I were just talking a little bit before the show, and I'm excited to dive into this because this is kind of fresh ground for the portal. We don't do a lot of shows like this, if any, actually. I mean, maybe we've touched a little bit on this stuff in the past, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say because I think not only myself, but many of our listeners find this stuff incredibly fascinating. But I guess maybe the best place to start is, where did this start for you?
Well, it's been a part of my life forever, as long as I can remember. The first thing to understand is the paranormal is normal. It's everywhere. It affects all of us. And it's a part of our life that everyone should try to understand. So being young, you didn't really understand that I could perceive things that other people didn't perceive. I just thought, everybody's like this. But there was one very significant event that happened when I was in my late 20s, which involved experiencing a haunted house of a relative of mine that was 100% legitimate. It was very active, a million different things happened, but we had the first thing that triggered all this was my wife and I, we were friends with this couple, and it was a relative of mine, and we were going to go stay overnight before a holiday. So when they purchased this house, it was owned by an older couple, and they were living in a trailer outside the house. And they thought that was odd. And as soon as they transacted, they were gone, and they left all the furniture in their house completely furnished.
Oh, wow.
Down to bed linens.
Oh.
So we had an opportunity to stay over. We slept in the back bedroom. There were twin beds left over. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I heard this banging in the ceiling, loud, rapping. And it wasn't frightening. I thought it was pipes. I thought it was pipes knocking. I just went back to sleep. And the next day, I said, boy, you got some loud pipes back there. And they responded, that's not pipes. And the wife broke down hysterical, saying, the house is haunted. And we started to learn about what was happening. So complicated story. But one night we had just left there. We used to socialize. And we left there. Drive back to my house, and my wife and I just got into bed, just about to fall asleep, and all of a sudden, I had this person's face right in my face, and it was a freed black slave named Albert Johnson, and I knew everything. I could feel the spit of his excitement in my face. He was completely out of control with fear and anger because he had been hunted down and lynched because he was forcibly accused of raping a white girl.
Oh, no.
And this was in Rhode Island. It was in the town of Situate. And he was actually a free man, and he operated a business. He was part of the community. So when that happened, I said, oh my God, I have to figure this out. What is this? What's going on? Another day, I went back to this house, and the homeowner said, come with me. I'm going to show you something. He said, I was out early one morning fishing, and I spotted this orb, this bouncing. He didn't even know what an orb was. He said this bouncing light, and his dog followed it into the woods, and they came across an unmarked historical graveyard.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
in Rhode Island, there's many hundreds of them. They're everywhere. I mean, people have lived there a long time. But this was unmarked. We went to it. There were 2 carved gravestones, and off to the side, there was like a rough-edged flint with the name Albert Johnson scribbled on it, scratched into it.
Whoa.
And the effect of that on me was permanent. I don't know how to describe it. It was life-changing, because that's when I said, I've got to figure this out. How does this work? I just can't leave this alone. So anyways, that kind of put me on my journey, and my commitment is to making the process of what happens after your body ceases to function, and to put it in everyday language, because everything I can do, you can do. It has nothing to do with a gift. It's just being able to access the consciousness that we're all a part of.
That's incredibly interesting. In this case, and in other cases, then do you act as a facilitator to help the spirits like Albert move on, or what do you do once you sense something like that? And I may be jumping way ahead, and I apologize, but it just the
I've
first
got an
thing.
answer to that. Sure.
Sure.
Again, I've never seen an apparition. And the reason I've never seen one is because they don't need to use that energy to appear, because I already have them in my mind, because they can see me. Once that link is connected, it has, in several instances, triggered the resolution process with that individual, because the only reason an individual remains as a spirit is they have unresolved ego struggles. When you pass, when your body ceases to function, the bill comes due for everything you've done in your life. There is no decision you make that does not have a consequence. And for some people, that's a struggle. And they remain. So the final goal is to be able to give up your identity permanently. Say goodbye to Jeff Berube. You no longer exist. That's very hard, and you can't do that if you're still struggling with something. So people who are not good people have a harder time going through that process, because they have to relive every single thing that they did to someone else. You have to be brave to do that.
So then in the case of Albert, just by connecting with him, that started his process for releasing, is that what you're saying?
Right. So why did Albert come to me? Because he's desperate. It's not random. He's exactly like another person without a body going, help me, help me, help me, help me. Because he's trapped. He's trapped in a never-ending death struggle. So I can't tell you if I resolved him. Because at that time, I didn't understand the way I do now. But I would imagine it might have kind of like greased the wheel, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
It just causes them, they see me, I see them, and it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then sometimes they see themselves through me. They can sometimes they're fractured into many pieces. It's not that same person. So I don't have a hard answer to that, but I would like to think that I at least helped him in some way.
Okay. And have you, just as, and this again is just a wild curiosity, but I find it absolutely fascinating that, there are those people that can help to facilitate this. I think it's a necessary thing in a lot of these cases, that they're stuck for whatever reason, and they just need someone to help aim them towards their own resolution. And so
Right.
even at this point, have you worked to connect with him and help him move past? Okay, gotcha.
I disagree with that belief in the sense that, having done this so much, nothing in the way of ritual or anything works. None of it works. That person has to make the decision themselves. They have to. It's the ultimate responsibility. So you can't burn sage. You can't, say a prayer. It doesn't matter. This is beyond anything human beings can think of. So all the things that we use, tools, don't work.
Okay. I appreciate your position on that. I of course there's a lot of differing views on that, but I can't claim to know either way. I'm certainly,
right. I can.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
That is my claim. And I know I sound like a jerk when I say that, but I'm telling you, I know.
Okay.
It's that easy. You don't need a big deal to figure this out. I'm telling you, it's that easy.
Okay. So at what point did you did you decide to start using this to help, actively as a part of a pursuit of your life?
I tried on that case. I tried to contact people at a local university, and I thought, this is going nowhere. So I just kind of put it to the side. I moved to Pennsylvania. I was in a difficult separation from my wife, and it was just one of those things. And I ended up in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, there was, on TV, there were certain paranormal story and investigative shows. And I saw one of these shows, and they were in a facility doing an investigation. I went, oh my God, that's right down the road from here. I know what that is. And I saw the person who was on TV, and I contacted them. He was a Pennsylvania state trooper who had a paranormal investigative team. And I contacted him, and I said, I don't know. I just want to do stuff. Can I hook up with you? And we met for coffee. He questioned me in a sense for about 10 minutes. And then he kind of just looked at me and went, okay, you're in. So he kind of got a sense. And then from there, I started doing, let's say, structured reads, READS, structured reads. I can read remotely. I can be on spot. I develop a certain protocol to work with him and to work with other investigative situations. I was able to develop a consistent process that I know produces accurate results. I know where the bodies are buried, literally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can stand on a spot and tell you that that's where the body fell, right there. I've done it dozens of times.
Wow. Very powerful.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I amaze when I do it. It blows my mind to this day. It really does. It's like, oh my God. What is wrong with you? I think, what, it's just too much sometimes.
Do you think that is the souls of those people that were harmed? Is that them reaching out to show you, or is it
No,
another
it's
process?
it's another process, and it's very simple. And I'll use an analogy because, once again, I've tried to develop everyday language so you can understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're standing in front of me, and I have a ball in my hand. I throw the ball up in the air. I catch it. You see that. You know it happened. I tell you to turn around. I throw the ball up in the air and I catch it. You don't see it. You don't know it happened, but it happened. Everything is permanent. Every action, situation remains. So I can go in a building and I can say, this was used as a butcher shop 80 years ago. And people would be like, oh, how do you know that? It's because that data exists. It remains. So everything that's ever happened is knowable. All things are knowable to all people at all times. It's universal.
Would that be akin to what people call the Akashic records then?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, fair enough.
It gets complicated when you start to use Eastern terms and Eastern mind. Again, I've just tried to take it right down to the street, and like anybody can understand it.
Okay.
So yeah. So if someone's died, I can feel the death.
Would you say that is more? I'm just trying to identify, and maybe it's silly to even try, but of course, I deal with a lot of terminology. We hear a lot of terminology in my wheelhouse, and some of what you're describing sounds like a spiritual medium, some mediumship or connection, and some of it sounds like physical medium and perhaps both. And when you're reading a building, that sounds like something that a physical medium generally does. And I don't mean to throw terms at you and try to, wall you into an identification here, because it sounds like your process is pretty unique, at least your understanding in the way that you implement it, which I really respect. But is that maybe accurate, at least mildly?
I mean, yeah, I reject all labels. I really do. I reject labeling anything. So, yeah, I know where you're going. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But I just reject it.
Yep. And I don't like them either.
I want it to be outside of labels. It's outside of that kind of thinking.
Right. Yeah, because it's not in our normal realm of understanding. So, yeah, to try to pin it down. Fair enough. And so, I respect that.
Another just continuation of that answer is, I will say, I know this. I know something. It's different than believing. A belief system you adopt. You put it on like a coat to keep you from the cold. So if you're a Christian, you're told to believe this. And you think, okay, I'm going to be this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm that. And that's okay. If that helps you through your life, go for it. Life is tough. But I try to not have belief systems. I try to simply keep it, I know. It's about that, being on that groove of knowing.
Okay. Yeah, and I respect that. I think that's great. So you did end up working with law enforcement though, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay. Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
No, I'd love to.
Okay.
Here's the first thing. You don't work multiple times with detectives if you're not useful. They have no patience for you.
Right.
So you either, the way we would start to work is, well, particularly with one series, I tell them I'm like a sniffer dog. My goal is to be a useful tool. That's it. And as long as they get information from me that is interesting to them, they'll use you. And if someone to ask them, do you know this guy, Jeff Berube? They'd say, no, I've never met him, because I'm like a snitch. They don't divulge their sources. It's kind of a weird thing.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? It's very secretive.
Yeah.
So I guess the most kind of interesting series of events was I was called in through a series of connections through Pennsylvania law enforcement to work on a cold case, which was widely known in northeastern Pennsylvania. A young man had been murdered, gunned down, and his mother had taken out billboards offering money for any information. So it was publicly well understood of what was going on. So they bring me in. So when I go to an investigation, I need to have three things. I need to have a sincere person. If you're messing with me, trying to trick me, I can't work. I've got to have a sincere person. I've got to have a neutral label of the account. Like, I don't want any information. Just give me a neutral label, because sometimes I'm working on 5 or 6 different things. So we're talking about the cabin. We're talking about the house near the river. Or, keep it kind of like that. And then I can triangulate information, and the information flows. So anyways, I get picked up. I'm with one of my team members, and a state trooper picks us up in his private car. And his goal was to solve this case before he retired. So if you're familiar with Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania has lots of what they call game lands, very rural areas. But there are roads through them, and it's Pennsylvania. People drive around. So we drive out deep into this area, and he stops the car. It was a truck. He stops the truck. And the whole time, I like to be driven to a place, and I like to just be able to curl up and just kind of start doing my thing. So sometimes I'm not really in control when I start. So I jump out of the truck, I run up the hill, and I go, the body was right there. And the trooper comes out, and I could tell by the look at his face, he's going, oh no, this is going to be a wild ride. And all of a sudden I looked around, and I hadn't seen these. I could see all evidence flags. And I thought, oh, well, there's my confirmation right there. This is a spot. And I immediately knew certain things. Certain things I can smell. I'll use that quote. I can smell drugs. I can smell the occult. And I can smell physical and sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. They leave a very strong vibration. So I said, oh, yeah, okay, so this is drugs. 2 guys killed him. They shot him. I looked across to the right, and there was a hunting cabin, and I said, that cabin's involved. And then I looked back at the cop, at the trooper, and I said, you already know who did this. I said, you already know who did this. This guy, told his mother or something. So he said, well, yeah, we do. I just wanted to see what you could do. I was exactly right. It was a case that was active, and the guy confessed, and everybody knew he did it. And it was over drugs. They lured him in. They got him high. They shot him. And continuing on, I said, yeah, they did something weird to the body. I don't know what it is. It almost feels like a ceremony or something. Well, what happened was they went away, they came back, they took his clothes off, and they lit him on fire.
Oh, God.
So he was dead.
Yeah.
But I couldn't identify that, but I knew they had messed with the body somehow. So from that point on, this guy was like, my God, we got a real one here. So then that wasn't even the actual job I was being taken to. That he tested me, but I passed. So we go to the next one, and took me a while, but I'm kind of walking around, we're in a wooded area, but there's a turnoff off a road. So it was frequented by hunters and kids partying and stuff like that. So it wasn't desolate. But I walked over a certain spot and I said, he died right here. I said he was shot. It was a gunfight. And I used the term mano a mano. I said, that's what this feels like. It was a face-to-face gunshot. I said, there were two shooters, and they snuck up from this direction. And one of the shooters was very nervous and inexperienced, and the other one was experienced. And they feel like his Latin gang members, like Trente del Agua, or MS-13 or something like that. I said he walked out of the woods. They came up to the back of his Jeep. They exchanged gunfire. He made it to his Jeep, and he was on the ground, and they did the kill shot. Bang. And he was done. Nobody knew any of that information. And I was exactly right about the two shooters. And they already knew that one shooter was not good and the other one was. There was two different firearms. And they just peppered the back window of his Jeep. And, they immediately lit up when I started saying that.
Wow.
So they actually, so that was the first detective I worked with. And at that time, there was a waterway that ran right next to this, a stream with a bridge over it. And to the left side of the street, the downstream side, it went down to a water treatment plant, a little rural kind of thing, just like a small outbuilding. And kids used to party there. So they had actually done a search in the river from that point down. I walked over to the bridge. And I said, oh, no, everything happens over this side. Here's where they came from. Here's where they parked down the road. And you need to search this part of the river. And they actually did, which is a weird feeling because it's like, oh, my God, people are doing shit now. So I'm going to be careful.
Yeah.
So not a lot came from that other than the fact that they had identified tire tracks when the event happened at the spot down upstream that I pointed out. And so it was a piece of information that they didn't connect. Oftentimes what I can do is I can connect the dots to their suspicions, because I can't necessarily pick up an object and say, here's the gun or something like that. But I can validate where they're already going sometimes. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, how do you know that? So we must be right. He knew that type of thing.
Right. Just to help them aim their investigations, right?
Yeah, I'm just a tool. I'm totally comfortable with that. I don't want it to be about me. Once again, I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, the state police are calling me in, like, legitimately. I kind of have a little bit of that imposter syndrome many times. I've gotten over it, but back in the beginning, it's like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Did it ever?
Yeah, so at one point I said to that detective, he said, there have been certain vehicles that were noticed in the area, and I said, the little red car, and his jaw literally drops. And I love that. I love when you can make a detective, a hard-ass detective, break his stone face.
Sure.
It's great. Yeah, so things like that. And years later, they reopened the case, called me back in, and at that time, they took me to his vehicle. I met his mother. Yeah. So my thinking behind that whole case was that this was a hit. It was a hired hit, and he was hit because he knew too much about, uh, let's just say, a state agency that he worked for. I don't want to get into the details.
Fair enough.
I said he knew about embezzlement, and everybody knew about this. And this was not just me. Everybody knew about this. And I didn't know about it until I said it. And then we started to look into it. And somehow he got in an unfortunate loop, and they killed him.
Wow.
And the local police were involved in a bad way. I knew they were involved. I said, this doesn't make sense. They got in the scene before the state troopers. They moved the vehicle. They tainted the crime scene. They denied everything. And I actually got to meet those guys. That was a cold reception.
I'll bet. Wow. So the case did get cracked and solved then, eh?
No, it's still active.
Oh, okay.
So is that story a good story? Yes, to me it is, because I know what I did, and they can only do so much, but they continue to investigate in the avenues that I knew what the shoe was in a boot print that they identified that no one knew. I identified exactly what the shoe was.
Oh, wow.
So they knew that there was something there, but if this is gang activity in that part of Pennsylvania, there are lots of gang activity, drug-related things. So who knows? But that was approved by the local attorney general. Had to get approved.
Wow.
Not a big deal. They just have to ask permission, but they gave him permission.
Yeah, why not? Especially if you're really proven to be an asset that can help them, uncover these things. I mean, if that's really their objective, they'll use whatever means. I would hope, although
exactly right.
There's always the old stigma, though, of course, and maybe that's why they don't publicly discuss that kind of thing, just because. Never. But that's okay, and you're not in it for an ego reason. Okay. Yeah. You're not doing it to satiate your ego. Right. I got to ask you though, during the course of these things, do you feel a great sense of pressure to provide results, or do you just kind of go into it like, well, if I get something, I get something?
I used to, when I first started, I used to, and I would hesitate with things like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. I can't say that. And I quickly learned that you just have to have courage, and you just have to say, either I believe in it, I believe in myself, and this is legitimate, or it's not. So I don't couch anything. I just let it go. And if it means something and they want to focus on that, then I can work with it. But no, I don't, I can't try to please someone. That can't be a part of it.
Fair. Yeah, I agree completely, because once you insert your own emotions into it, you're already convoluting the process then, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and plus when I'm working, I'm not in my right state of mind either. You know what I mean? I'm in a different place. So in order to facilitate that, you can't cloud your head with random thoughts about, is this productive? What do they do? What do they think of me? You just can't.
Yeah, I believe that makes perfect sense to me, because I think for anybody to really tune into this stuff, you got to be in a real centered personal space first. That seems to be common with a lot of this. I'm not pretending to know your process specifically, but do you teach other people how to do this in any regard, or is this a very personal process for you?
For many years, I've wanted to do like a whiteboard presentation. And the goal is, I don't want to teach anybody how to do anything. I want them to understand the nature of consciousness. Because once you understand that, it will flow. So there really is only one consciousness. That's it. It's a single point, and that's all of us. There's only one point. So when I'm working, I'm more aware of the point than I am of Jeff Berube. And once I'm aware of the point, anything that's knowable, I can know. So can you. It's not hard. I'm telling you, it's not hard.
But
you don't have to buy a book.
But you were, from your earliest experiences, you've always been aware of these things, though, right?
Kind of, yeah. I just didn't understand it. Took me a while to intellectualize it enough that I could talk about it.
Just out of curiosity, is the logical part of you a big part of how you process things, or do you do it purely from an emotional state, or is it an amalgamation of both?
It's simply me putting into words visions, sounds, smells, thoughts, feelings, whatever I'm becoming aware of. Mm-hmm. So as I walk in a property, I start to become aware of things. Again, I start to know things. All of a sudden, I know this. I know someone got murdered here. It's like, it's different than just thinking about it.
Right. I want to ask you, you had made mention that you can smell murder, you can smell drugs, you can smell, and is that just your way of articulating that you're getting those vibes and it hits you?
Yeah.
It hits you like a smell. Like when you walk into some place, it's like you smell something bad. It's like, oh, is that the way this stuff hits you? Or is it more subtle than that?
Well, it's hard to put into human words.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, well, drugs have this certain color haze over them. Mm-hmm. And sexual abuse has this color haze over it. It's not a color. It's not a haze.
Right.
It's just, I recognize it after doing this so much. You recognize that drugs always feel that certain way.
Okay.
And after a while, it's like I walk in and I can go, oh, yeah, this is an abuse situation. I can feel it immediately.
Wow. And I think that's powerful.
Sex is a very powerful emotional influence on everyone. Right. And, if you're doing a residential read, people don't necessarily want to hear that their uncle was a pervert. You know what I mean? But it causes a lot of spiritual issues. I'm not talking about loving normal sex. Right. I'm talking about hurtful, torturous, painful, very deeply disturbing. Yeah. Beyond what you think.
I can't imagine. I did work in corrections for a number of years, so I kind of there you go. I kind of get what you're talking about with just that vibe, that to a degree. I think it's very interesting the way that you've articulated it, though, because I like that you can smell it, because I suppose after doing it for a while, it becomes just part of who you are, and you do become aware of these energies or these imprints, or however you want to define it, because of your exposure to them and being exposed to these extreme locations where extreme, tragic, horrible things have happened. I'm sure it leaves, you get, it probably is very visceral for you.
It is, totally. I'm wiped out. So many people say, once again, we'll switch to residential.
Okay.
So many people on a residential level, I will sometimes, not always, bring clarity to a certain situation. So they go, oh my God, we're not crazy. This makes perfect sense. I get, and they would constantly say, oh, what do we owe you? And I'd say, no, you know me. I think they say, oh, no, this is, we're going to, can we make a donation? I mean, I've had people want to donate, and I say, I finally developed this answer where I said, you know what? This is my fee. My fee is one cigarette, because a cigarette, after an investigation, for some reason, has the ability to restore me.
Hmm.
And it's a tobacco thing.
Yep.
And I would just take it because I'm so tapped out, and that one smoke, and it'd be like, oh, okay,
Yep.
I'm coming back. Yeah, but it drains you. It absolutely does.
That's really interesting that you say that, because tobacco in a lot of esoteric fields is regarded as a grounding mechanism to partake of tobacco. So that's really cool that you've had that experience, and that's, you stumbled onto that. So that's amazing.
Yeah, it helps, you know. It helps. I had another case with the state police, Pennsylvania, where they brought me in an active investigation. This was not a cold case. This was active. And my detective called me, and we had already worked together, so he knew my process. And they let me read it remotely first, and then he said, then we're going to take you to the site. So we named it The Cabin. And immediately, so once I have that kind of triangulated situation with a sincere seeker, a neutral label, and me, the information typically flows. So the first thing I said was, this is sex. Yeah, this is kinky sex. I said, this guy travels back and forth to this cabin to have sex with what feels like trafficked women, young girls. And I started to just get more and more information. And I said, yeah, I'm getting this vibe, this weird vibe of this person that comes down from the north, goes back and forth from the north. And this person is really creepy because this person's messed up drugs. This is a creepy person. And then I said, I'm getting another person, another guy who comes and goes through the woods. I said, I'm not exactly who this is or what the role is, but I see him coming and going to this house through the woods. So, I just remembered this. This is cool. I'm actually pretty shallow about this because we got to ride out in a squad car with 2 armed detectives. So I'm like, whoa, this is cool. Yeah, I just enjoy that stuff.
Sure.
So we pull up this long dirt driveway, and there's multiple houses. And at the top of the driveway, I looked at my detective. I said, we're going to get caught. And he says, what do you mean? I said, I'm telling you right now, we're going to get caught. And all of a sudden, this guy drives up in his pickup truck. And it was a neighbor that lived maybe 200 feet down the road or so, checking to see who was driving up the house. And this neighbor fit. I gave a description of this guy. I said, he's a cowboy. He has a cowboy hat, a big, thick mustache, cowboy boots, suspenders. That's kind of how he looks. This guy steps out of his truck. That's what he was wearing. And I looked at my detective again, and you know, we're all guys, so I bust balls. It's like, yeah, I told you. And so he already, you know, because I'm loose with this guy because we knew each other at this point. He trusted me. So I went in the house, and I went right up to the bedroom, and I said, oh, he was shot here. Said, it's one shooter. And I said, it feels to me like the guy that I just met found this guy. I have to be careful here. If I found this guy involved with someone else, and there was a romantic link between the two men. Whether it was fulfilled, I don't know or not. Maybe this guy just had feelings, but it was a fit of jealousy that caused this person to shoot them. And then at that point, I actually they wanted me to speak directly to this guy. And I was shocked. I said, "Are you sure? Isn't there something I need to sign? Oh, how do we deal with this?" And they said, "No, you're fine. You're with us. We're just doing our thing." So we went down to this person's house, and he came to the door and he was sobbing. And I'm going to start crying. And I knew, he knew, we all knew. And I'm in my place a million miles away. And it was a very deep moment. And I said, "It's time to tell the truth. It's time to tell the truth."
Oh, wow.
And that's all I could say. And he didn't, but he knew. He was sobbing. And hard to describe that type of moment. They took me back to a vehicle they had impounded because the night that this person was murdered was visited by this woman who lived north, who used to come back and forth to that town. And she was semi-homeless and had like deranged journals. When I first got her, I said, the weird thing about this woman is I can't tell whether she's dead or alive. I said, this is unusual. I don't know what to think of this person. And that's deeply psychotic when they're like that.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So I got to, see her journals and stuff like that. So that eventually did get resolved, but I probably said too much, but whatever.
Well, it's fascinating, and I think it's absolutely wonderful that you're able to help find answers, because I just know that for every one of these cases there were people that loved them, and
Oh yeah,
and many times they're left with no answers or no resolution.
right.
And I think it's so powerful that you're able to come in and help bring them to a resolution and to have a finality and a closing for this nightmare in their lives. So it's truly a blessing, what you're doing.
Sometimes it works that way, but many times they don't get resolved.
Oh,
Not every cold case is resolved. I might work at it 2 times. They might have other things, and sometimes you just can't close that door.
right.
It's a very complicated process.
Yeah. And I can only imagine, but I mean, even if you've helped, and it sounds like you've helped in many cases, but if all you were able to ever do was help in one case, that's huge, because those people might, be able to find
Sure.
their healing finally. And that's
Right.
extraordinary and wonderful. So I think it's
Right.
wonderful what you're doing.
If can I tell you about
Absolutely.
another story?
Yeah.
So I just thought of this. This is a good one in the sense of helping. So I'm with this paranormal group. They invited me to come in, but they already had their own psychic. I hate the term psychic. And I said, well, that's good because that's not me. So I don't care what she does. But so I was here first. And I said, I really don't want to be in the house the same time as she's here. That's just ridiculous. She can do her own thing. I'm here first. I'm going. So we get in the house, and the first thing I said, wow, there's a lot of blood on the ground right here. There's blood on the ground. This is multiple people. I said, this house is connected with that house across the street. I don't know what the connection is. I said, this house also was something different than just a residential home. It was active. There were people coming and going, and I could feel it. It was active. these people are having problems with their son, like bad problems. And I go into the house, and one of the things that happens to me is the pit of my stomach drops when I'm getting, let's say, a strong situation. So the pit of my stomach drops bad. And I went, oh, this is going to be hard. I can tell you right now. And I noticed that they had scratched, no, I guess they had written with chalk, I think, not parables, but quotes from the Bible. I can't remember what they were on the door frames.
Okay.
Yeah. So I said, what's up with that? And they said, well, we think that there are demons in our house, and it's to try and protect us. And these people were really at the end of their rope. They're having issues with their son, seeing things, feeling things, having very negative thoughts. So I went up to the son's bedroom, and I started identifying a thing. Sometimes the consciousness you touch upon is not human anymore. It's can be the fragmentation of a person that's drifted so far to the negative side of things that they lose their humanity and they become a thing. And that's what we had there. And it's hard to really understand who that person was, but I kind of had some thoughts and we talked about it. The point of this story is I went to the parents and they said, well, we're just going to step outside for a smoke. And I said, oh, good, I need one. I'm terrible. I don't smoke.
Yeah.
So they divulged what was happening because I didn't know anything. And there was a custody battle over this boy, and they would have to let him go stay with his father. And his father was an avowed Nazi Satanist. And he would have the boy over. He would smoke bath salts and watch porn while his 10-year-old or 11-year-old son or whatever it was with him. And he had a portrait of Hitler on the wall.
Oh, dear God.
Very sick individual, but the court had to give him parental rights. Oh. So as a result of that, the team that brought me in had a law enforcement connection, and they alerted the courts.
Oh, good.
And then I was no longer involved with it, but I was able to actually get that message out to the court system to see if they could keep this kid away from his paternal father.
Yeah.
So the other psychic comes in, and she walks around, and she's got a little figurine of this, and she puts the figurine on the bed, and she burns some sage, and she goes, oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. And I looked at my people. I said, everything is not fine. I said, this is really bad. She said, oh, I don't think I have anything to worry about. I said, oh, no, you definitely have something to worry about. And by the end of the night, she was saying, oh, this is so negative. It's such a bad thing here. Oh, yeah. And right in front of me, it's like, are you kidding me? Maybe she just didn't get it. I don't know. But
yeah, that's the tough part. And I'll be the first to admit there's a lot of people flying their psychic flag that probably shouldn't.
Oh, crazy.
Be. Yeah, that probably shouldn't be, and again, I think it's certainly a capability we all have, but there's a lot of people claiming it that I don't think are as in tune as they think they are, or at least claim to be.
What they've done is they've adopted a belief system.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So things have to fall into their belief system, and that's how they maintain their ego of being who they are because they've adopted this belief system.
Wow.
So I try not to adopt belief systems. It's hard, but I try not to.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, Jeff, this has been an absolute thrill ride. I appreciate I mean, seriously, I've really enjoyed this. It's very fascinating to hear of your experiences and to hear, how you've been a part of all of this strange and wild world that you've been engulfed in. But I hope you'll come back because I know we got
I'd love to, sure.
a lot more ground to cover. So, but thank you so much for coming on today and sharing what you did.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show. And thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. You all take care, and remember, we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.